and other cities. Please remember these names: Kherson and Berdyansk. The courage of these people is admirable, and I call on everyone globally to support them and show solidarity with their brave and peaceful demonstrations. The message of the heroic Ukrainian people is simple: Russians, go home. You are on foreign land where no one needs you and no one welcomes you with flowers. Putin, leave Ukraine alone. You will not win this war. Time to save lives of Russians and end this bloodbath. As long as Russia doesn't demonstrate any constructive approach, the Ukrainian diplomacy keeps working tirelessly to increase pressure on Russia, isolate it from the world, strengthen the Ukrainian army with the help of our partners, ensure humanitarian aid and assistance to Ukrainians and foreign nationals, including students suffering from the Russian aggression, as well as collecting facts of war crimes committed by Russians against civilians for further trials and delivering justice. In the first week of aggression, diplomats have mobilized and collected 1,633 tons of humanitarian aid, 66,384 items of defense, including weapons, ammunition, and equipment. Together with Ukrainian communities abroad, and my special thanks go to them, we have raised 338 million euro, $74.5 million, and £4 million to accounts of the National Bank of Ukraine and other accounts created to help Ukraine at this dark moment. We thank every donator for making his or her contribution. These achievements are still not enough, and the war is ongoing. We need to step up pressure on Russia and strengthen Ukraine's defense in order to prevail. To prevail as we defend not only Ukraine, but also the European security and the world order as we know it. And we, Ukrainian diplomats, keep working on that. Ukraine demands a new round of sanctions against Russia. Yesterday, I took part in the Foreign Affairs Council of the EU ministers with the participation of Secretary Blinken, Foreign Secretary Truss, Minister Joly of Canada, and Secretary General of NATO, Jens Stoltenberg. At that meeting, I outlined the next steps we insist on. They include, among others, banning Russian Sberbank from SWIFT, closing European ports for Russian ships, closing access of Russia to cryptocurrency, and stopping purchases of Russian oil. Russian oil smells with Ukrainian blood today. Buying it is financing Russian war crimes. You can't buy a little bit of it and be a little bit complacent with those war crimes. It's an either-or moment. On the parallel track, we see a mass exodus of multinational companies from the Russian market. There are already 113 companies that have stopped working in Russia or with Russia. I commend their decisions. I call on all companies to stop trade and cooperation with Russia and Russian partners. Stop investments. Every dollar or euro earned from business with Russia today is soaked in the blood of Ukrainian men, women, and children. We also made it very clear that Ukraine needs the protection of its skies. First and foremost, to stop the indiscriminate and barbaric bombardment by the Russians of Ukrainian cities, which leads to multiple civilian casualties. This includes our demand to close the sky over Ukraine and also the need to provide Ukraine with combat aircraft and serious air defense and missile defense weapons. My message to the world is clear. When all European and other leaders at all ceremonies throughout the year repeat those sacred words, never again, they now need to prove with actions that they stand by those words, that they are committed to not letting it happen again. Because the last time European cities saw what happens today in Kharkiv, Chernihiv, Sumy, Kyiv, Zhytomyr, and other Ukrainian cities and towns was 80 years ago, when Nazis bombed European capitals. Never again? Prove it. Prove now that you have learned the lessons of the past. that a new brutal force in Europe can be stopped before it drags the whole continent into a devastating conflict. The way to stop is to unite, is to get united and to continue stepping up pressure on Russia. This is the only way that all of us can prevail. Thank you.
We have a question from Politico. Would you support the EU combining the membership applications of Ukraine, Georgia and Moldova as a trio? What is your message to the French Presidency of Council of the EU about the urgency of Ukraine's application?
With all my due respect to our old partners in European integration, Georgia and Moldova, Ukrainian case is absolutely exceptional. We insist that the case of Ukraine is considered on its own and that it is considered within as soon as possible. The procedures can and should be suppressed in order to ensure smooth integration process of Ukraine into the European Union for the good of all, Ukraine and the European Union itself. My message to the French presidency is very simple. President Macron has demonstrated his leadership in the last months in dealing with the security in Europe. Now he has the power and all moral grounds to take the leadership in speeding up integration of Ukraine into the European Union. This will send a very clear message to the people of Ukraine that when Europe says that we are one of them, it actually means it. And second, this will also send a message to President Putin that whatever he tries to do, he can throw hundreds of more bombs on us, but this will not change the choice made by the people of Ukraine to be part of the EU. But also it will not change the choice made by the European Union, as it was expressed recently in the resolution of the European Parliament and also by the President of the European Commission, that Ukraine belongs to Europe and will become a member of the European Union. Act now, be quick, and it will be a huge contribution to the overall success of our victory over the aggressor.
A joint question by Voice of America and Deutsche Welle. What is your take on the current humanitarian ceasefire? How do you see the situation around the nuclear plants, and how do you see the international response so far? What can be improved?
The humanitarian corridors and humanitarian ceasefire do not exist because the Russian forces literally violated the agreement reached in the morning to arrange 2 humanitarian corridors. We urge Russia to stop shooting, to allow civilians, including foreign students, leave the cities which they are trying to destroy by air raids, by artillery, by rockets, and also to allow the access of humanitarian aid to those who remain in the cities. Russia should stop its barbarian warfare and follow the rules envisaged by international conventions. And what was the second question?
In the second, with the international response so far, what can be improved?
Yes, as I said just a couple of minutes ago, there is still a list of sanctions which must be imposed on Russia by both the European Union and the United States, Canada, Britain, and other countries from all over the globe. It's only the solidarity and the unity that can ensure the most effective outcome or the most effective impact of sanctions imposed on Russia.
Indian Vion has 2 questions. First, can you assure the safety of Indian nationals in Sumy and rest of Ukraine? How is Ukraine helping in evacuation of Indian nationals? And the second one, what expectations from India in pacifying the ongoing situation?
For 30 years, Ukraine was a welcoming home for thousands of students from Africa, from Asia, and they never had problems here. They were well integrated into our society, and everything was fine. They lived normal life. Many of them stayed in Ukraine after graduating from universities. The Russian aggression changed it all. And as together with Ukrainians, they suffer from Russian bombardments, from Russian shellings, and from Russian indiscriminate shooting. The best Russia can do now is to stop fire and to allow everyone, including foreign students, to leave these besieged cities through Ukrainian territory. To facilitate the withdrawal, the movement of foreigners from Sumy, from Kharkiv, Ukraine arranged some trains. We also set up a hotline that that foreign students can address. We work closely with relevant embassies and coordinate our efforts with them. Our border guards were instructed to provide foreign students with all necessary assistance. The Ukrainian government is doing its best to allow foreign students to leave the country in the safest way possible under the circumstances. If Russia stops manipulating the issue of foreign students and stops the fire and agrees to a ceasefire, they will all be safely evacuated. So your governments of India, China, Nigeria, other countries whose students are locked up in Sumy and Kharkiv, I encourage you, I call on you to appeal to Russia, stop fire, allow civilians to leave these cities through the territory of Ukraine. What we're observing now is the manipulation by Russia. They try to win the sympathy of the countries I mentioned by accusing Ukraine of keeping these foreign students as hostages, of violating their rights, of discriminating them. But I would like to say once again, for 30 years, Ukraine was a real home for your students. And it continues to be a home for them, even under the fire of Russia. One country cannot change in one day. And trust me, your students, your nationals living in Ukraine, they enjoy the same level of support from their neighbors, from their Ukrainian neighbors, friends. The only reason of the current problem is the way Russia tries to destroy our cities, which became home for both your nationals and Ukrainians.
And the second question was how India can help achieve peace.
As I said, all countries who enjoy special relations with India, they can appeal to President Putin, Prime Minister Modi. We call on him to continue reaching out to President Putin and explaining to him that this war is against the interests of all. The only person on the entire planet who is interested in this war is President Putin himself. The people of Russia are not interested in this war either. Moreover, we have to take into account another factor. India is one of the largest consumers of Ukrainian agricultural products. And if this war continues, it will be difficult for us to seed new harvests and then to collect it. So again, even in terms of global food security and Indian food security, it's in the best interest to stop this war. And to achieve that, call Putin, demand from him to stop this war. Ordinary Indians can put pressure on the Russian embassy in India to demand from them again to stop the war. Ukraine does not need this war. We are fighting only because we were attacked, and we understand that we have to defend our land because Putin does not recognize our right to exist. But every country in the world can help us by demanding from Putin to stop the war.
Many questions on no-fly zone, but basically Reuters is asking what progress is there in terms of talks on the no-fly zone, and some questions whether it's a way to escalate or de-escalate the crisis.
The position of NATO on no-fly zone is frustrating. Unfortunately, I have to say that because of the decision not to establish a no-fly zone, more civilians will be killed from the air by the Russian Air Force, more children will be killed more Ukrainian blood will be spilled. We continue to urge NATO to establish a no-fly zone over Ukraine. We also call on International Agency for Atomic Energy and the United Nations to ensure security of the nuclear power plants operating in Ukraine. We are ready to cooperate effectively with them. We need to, because if anything happens with a nuclear power plant, like it did in Zaporizhia, at the largest nuclear power plant in Europe, then it will not be a problem of Ukraine or Europe only. It will be a global disaster. So we are waiting for the response from the International Atomic Energy Agency to our request to provide security and safety of nuclear power plants and other objects of critical infrastructure related to nuclear energy in Ukraine, together with United Nations forces. Of course, there is a discussion, will no-fly zone escalate the situation, or will no-fly zone bring more security to Ukraine? The answer to this question depends on how confident NATO is in itself. If NATO believes that it is strong enough to establish a no-fly zone under the assumption that Russia will not dare to to engage militarily with NATO planes patrolling Ukrainian skies, then it must be then the no-fly zone must be established. If NATO does not feel confident and believes that it's not strong enough to face Russia in the air over Ukraine, then of course they will not establish the no-fly zone over Ukraine. This is very simple. This is how the people of Ukraine see it. And as I said, the decision announced so far is frustrating. But I think NATO has to reflect more on it, because in the end, it's all about saving lives of innocent human beings who get killed from the air.
And the last question, political US, what would Ukraine hope China to do on Russia?
I spoke with the Chinese foreign minister a couple of days ago. We had a long conversation about this conflict and about the way China can contribute to making peace. I received assurances from my Chinese counterpart that China is interested in stopping this war through diplomacy. We expect them to act. China enjoys special relationship with Russia, so we expect that they will be reaching out to Russia with a very consistent and strong message that this war is also against the interests of China, that this war is against the interests of humanity, and President Putin has to withdraw. Chinese diplomacy has sufficient tools to make a difference, and we count that it is already involved as a follow-up to my phone conversation with the Chinese foreign minister, and that their efforts will be successful. Thank you all. Thank you for staying with us. And I will be looking forward to seeing you next time. Glory to Ukraine, as we say it.